On today's episode of Locked On 76ers, a tremendous performance from CJ McCollum taking down the 76ers in New Orleans on Friday night. Keith and I break it down next. Second game in a row the Sixers have lost right here, Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, you are Locked On 76ers. I'm Devon Gibbons from 97.5 The Fanatic Radio in Philadelphia, alongside my co-host and partner, Keith Pompey of TheInquirer.com, joining us right here after a tough loss. What's up, Keith?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Oh, man, I'm doing all right. Better than the Sixers as they have that tough loss, 127-116 to the Pelicans. We'll dive into it all, what went down, how they lost this game. It looked promising in the first few minutes as they went up by 10, but unfortunately for them, falling yet again now 20-14 on the season. And we got to thank you all for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. Now make sure that you check us out, free and available on all platforms right here on YouTube at Locked On 76ers. 127, Keith, 116, the final score. Sixers up 10 early, 16-6. One of the things that we talked about, jumping on these teams early. You cannot have these games from the Clippers to the Knicks and then Washington. You finally lose one by getting off to a slow start. They got off to a good start, but then the Pelicans in the end wound up with a 14-3 run to take a 4-point lead after one. CJ McCollum started to hit his shots. Them as a team, the Pelicans, started to hit their shots. And, man, they just simply did not stop.
Yeah, I mean, them getting out to a start is starting to become a joke, man, if you're going to be real. Because what it is you have Joel Embiid killing people, and then when he goes to the bench, the last couple games, the bench has just been struggling.
15 points in the first quarter for him.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, but outside of that, it reminds you of last year's 76ers. And, I mean, it just does. It reminds you of where they got the starters out there. Like, they took James Harden out, and I'm like, oh, boy. And then they start taking people out. And I looked at that lineup that they had, and I'm like, man, on the defensive end, this is going to be hard. I mean, and then all of a sudden, it was like they couldn't make any shots, right? So at that particular point, and it was over. But here's the thing, man. They turned the ball over a lot. They made a lot of mistakes. But their inability to put someone on CJ McCollum for anyone on him to stop him was crazy. I mean, the dude had 42 points. He shot 11 threes, which was a franchise record. Yeah. Now, my thing is, CJ, we talked about him yesterday or today. We talked about him and we said, you know what? Whoever's guarding him is going to be the key matchup. He was wide open. And the thing that got me was, I understand it. And I said to myself, I know they're not playing Matisse, Thybulle a lot of minutes, but then you say to yourself, well, surely you're going to put them on him in the second half. You're going to put them on him in the second half. And they didn't. And I understand it. You might say to yourself that, Matisse, Thybulle isn't exactly a great offensive player. But when you got somebody baking your guys like that, and I'm telling you, dude, it was like, they were guarding him, but he kept getting open. So it comes a point in time where you got to put him on him. Now, they did put him on him at one point. He blocked the shot. He got a steal. The next thing you know, they call a timeout, and he's no longer on the game. So, to me, that was one of the biggest things. And I get it. They committed 19 turnovers, right? They had 19 turnovers that led to 30 points. So you can say that we turned the ball over a lot. However, you had 13 turnovers that led to 25 points in the first half, right? So that means you were better off in the second half. But my man was raining threes on y'all throughout the whole game. So to me, I know that was the difference in the game. That was the difference. They didn't make the right adjustments.
Well, I don't disagree. Both things can be true when you're talking about it, because absolutely someone needed to defend him better. It did not happen. Yeah, there are guys that are always going to go off and you say, yeah, you shake their hand and say you had a good game. But there were some adjustments that needed to be made on C.J. McCollum. Defensively, maybe to your point, 7 minutes and 47 seconds for Matisse Thybulle on Friday night. Not enough minutes to really get out there and get into a groove, trying to slow things down. And when you have that lineup that you talked about in there, when Joel Embiid sits down, you sit James Harden down, Tobias Harris also sitting down, your lineup is led by Tyrese Maxey, who has missed the last 18 games, and you're asking a lot for him to carry the load. And sure, you want them to run the offense, but he's the main focal point as far as scoring goes when you're out there. And look, man, that shooting performance was crazy. C.J. McCollum, to your point, hitting those 11 threes, a franchise record 42, and he was in a really good groove. They were never really that difficult, to your point. Didn't seem to be all that challenged. Maybe a few times, of course, they were there, but a few of them came in transition. But in the half-court set, you're right, he was wide open, and someone needed to slow him down, and they didn't have anybody to answer him for that. Now, as far as this points part that you talked about with Matisse Thybulle, when it comes to him being in the game, the Sixers scored. They scored 116 points, and the Pelicans averaged 117 themselves as far as scoring. So the Sixers did their part. They just put themselves in a hole, down by as much as 17 in the game. And the way that he was shooting, first half, he did his part. Then you get the second half with Zion Williamson. He scores 20 points in the second half to add to his 36 to help out with them. And then they also had, Keith, they had some really key contributions from others, with like Jonas Valanciunas had a solid contribution to the game tonight. Jose Alvarado, we talked about him coming into the game. He can change the game with his activity and his defensive play, picking you up 94 feet, sneaking behind you as you bring the ball up because you're not paying attention to him, coming in and tip the ball away. He got Maxey one time like that went the other way and led to another fast break opportunity. Those things hurt you in a game, and the Sixers absolutely did that. They were self-inflicted really with those turnovers, and also, as you mentioned, maybe they needed to do something different in trying to slow down C.J. McCollum.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing too: like the Sixers had 2 days. Like they lost to Washington on Tuesday. They flew there on Wednesday. They practiced on Thursday. They actually, Doc Rivers and Sam Cassell went to their game on Wednesday. So it's like you would think that they know that this team, Jose Alvarado, I mean, this guy he was the man last year. Remember last year, him and Joel got the double technicals, and Joel ended up playing. He's a fiery guy. You look at this team didn't sneak up on the Sixers. This team has the 3rd best record in the NBA, behind Boston, Brooklyn, and then it's the Pelicans. So this is a pretty good team. So you know what they bring. I just didn't like the way that I felt like it should have been more adjustments. I felt like they should have played a little bit Matisse more. And you're right. A good team is a reason why they're in first place, the things that these role players do. But the one thing that we ain't talk about is they still didn't have a second best player. Brandon Ingram didn't play. But the thing is, that lineup that we're talking about is the lineup for the people who don't know. And nothing against these guys. They're just not defensive guys. You had Maxey. You had
Shake, Niang.
You had Maxey, Shake, George Niang, Montrez, and PJ Tucker. Right? Yeah, so PJ Tucker is the only defensive-minded guy out there that they had. So it was kind of like you had to outscore them. And that's when the turnovers really started, when those guys went in there. So, I don't know. It was a bad display. Now, everybody going to say, like, we made mistakes, turnovers. But to me, coming off of that Washington game, the way they played down the stretch, and didn't it look the same way where Joel got off early and you thought Joel was going to be like, hey, I'm beasting everybody. And then he goes to the bench, and then next thing you know, they lose a lead. I mean, it was the same thing. Same exact thing.
Yeah, I actually thought when they were up 10, 16-6, I was like, okay, they're going to show something different. This is going to be a game here tonight. And it turned out to be a game more so of what they were doing. And look, I can't ignore what Embiid did because, again, just putting up the 30, 37 he had on 14 of 22. Again, just as you said, just doing whatever he wanted. So he was tremendous outside of the 5 turnovers, of course. But, yeah, tough loss for them. On the first night of a back-to-back. Now they have the Oklahoma City Thunder on Saturday. Keith, we come back, and we'll get into Tyrese Maxey's return also and what you saw from him in his first game back. We mentioned the lineup and how he was out there with the others. He wound up 4 for 10, finishing with 9 points off the bench. And I think a lot of people, even with this little small sample size, may have had their answer, their question answered about the starting role and the reserve role after the defensive performance, as you mentioned, from DeAnthony Melton on CJ McCollum, or the lack thereof, if you will. We'll come back. We'll dive into that next right here on Locked On 76ers.
BetOnline is your #1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From pro football to college bowl season to basketball and World Cup. And we've got it all at BetOnline. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those on BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Welcome back, Locked On 76ers. Thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. Make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today for the biggest stories around the sports world in 20 minutes or less, plus instant reactions, game recaps, and Locked On's take of the day. Locked On Sports Today, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Keith, Tyrese Maxey, first game back since November against the Milwaukee Bucks, and that win, 18 games off. He did play 18 minutes and 42 seconds. He was 4 for 10 from the floor, 1 for 3 from beyond, 9 points, 1 personal foul, 1 assist, 1 rebound, and 1 turnover for the Sixers tonight. How did you feel he played tonight? Again, going out there, first action, got to knock off some of that rust, got to get back to it. And I actually thought in the end, you saw some of the things that we're used to seeing. I like that he wasn't afraid to shoot the shots that we've been accustomed to seeing him take over the course of his growth now with the Sixers.
I mean, you know what? He looked a little bit he looked like a guy who hadn't played in a month. I mean, let's be real, right? A guy who hadn't played in a month. You know, I think defensively it was a struggle for him, but it was a struggle for a lot of guys on the defensive end. Right. I mean, he was a game worse, minus 18. You know, he shot 4 for 10, like you said. But at the same time, if we're going to, you got to say, here we go. This is his first game back. He looked a little passive early on. Like he wasn't his normal aggressive self to me. In the first quarter, he had 2 shots. That was it. Shot attempts. He didn't make it. In the second quarter, he was like 1 for 2. And then it just seemed like in the second half, as the longer he played, he just seemed to be a little bit more of himself. A little bit more aggressive, to a point where he hit his shot. And I was like, okay. Now, again, in the third quarter, he was on that one shot he hit. That was the only one he made. But at the same time, he was trying. So to me, it was one of those things where he got better as the game went along, but he also looked like a guy that this was his first game out there playing.
100%. 100%. As the game progressed, he started to look like Tyrese Maxey. You're right. He was passive a little bit early on, trying to feel his way in the game with his teammates. Again, he was the first sub off the bench for the Sixers. And you just wanted to see how he just responded to being back out there for the first time. He never looked tired. He still doesn't look tired. And they only played 18 minutes. but the stretch that he was in there, he never looked fatigued or anything like that. Little loose with the ball. That one turnover that he had was the one that Alvarado came from behind, half court, stole it, went the other way. But for the most part, I like the fact that he was aggressive to take the 10 shots. He wasn't afraid to, again, do that despite being off for all that time. And he'll be better as they continue to go along. The speed was still there, taking the ball baseline for that reverse layup that he had over the big defenders there. Didn't get a chance to see him in transition much because the Pelicans were the ones in transition and the Sixers just clearly were not. By the way, 30 fast break points for the Pelicans tonight. To the Sixers, just single digits. I believe it was 6, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just take a quick peek at that. And that is 8. Sorry, I short them 2 points. It was 8, 30-8 in that one. But yeah, I like what I saw from Maxey, all things considered, knowing that he just came back. And Doc Rivers was non-committal on him playing in the second game of the back-to-back against the Oklahoma City Thunder. If I had my guess, I would say he's not going to play, but it wouldn't shock me if he also gave him a little bit of run against the Thunder, who have been idle and sitting and waiting for the Sixers now after they played tonight. So yeah, man, I thought he looked pretty good. I thought he handled himself well, except for the early part, as you talked about, just simply trying to get the feel of the basketball again, feel the game, and not interrupt things with his teammates, and then later on picking it up again and settling in. And we'll see if he plays tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah.
So you also had a thing that you wanted to talk about, and we'll get to that next, as some guys lost their cool, Keith. A couple of technical fouls for the Sixers. Things started to go haywire in the second half. Guys lost their cool. We'll get to that in the second half here, right here on Locked On 76ers. And I got to tell you, man, that while we are getting ready now, tomorrow's the new year, and you're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks as you're celebrating the turn of the calendar into January 2023. Well, a few becomes a few too many, and as the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride, and then you simply say, nah, you know what? I got it. I live nearby. I can make it home okay. It's not a big deal. Well, what are the odds that you get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up, lose your license. How about your job? You total your car, or maybe even worse, you take someone's life. Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. Welcome back to Locked On 76ers. That's Keith Pompey. I'm Devon Givens. Keith, the Sixers picked up 2 technical fouls, and they were not happy in that, what was that, the second half, fourth quarter. P.J. Tucker picked up one at the 10:07 mark. Dan Burke from the bench, the assistant coach, he picked up one in less than a minute later because they were not happy with young official, Keith, I'm guessing, Jamal Rawls, who they were on him for a few calls. And I'll be honest. Sometimes the officials, look, they can't see everything, but there are 3 of them out there. You expect them to get things as close to right as possible. And he was a little whistle happy on a few where I thought he could have let a few things go. And on the other end, I didn't think that the Sixers got the same type of whistle. But you thought something about those 2 technicals that the Sixers picked up. What were your thoughts on it?
I mean, I just thought, like, you can't pick up technical fouls like that. I mean, regardless of what the officiating is like, you just can't do it. I mean, the game was inbound at that time. It wasn't one of those things where, they were just getting like blown out at that particular time. It was like they were trying to make a run. It's like you just can't have those type of techs. You just can't. And I felt like, first of all, when you do stuff like that, you're on the road. First of all, you're losing you're losing control a little bit. And when you do stuff like that on the road, or you do it at home, you hear ref, you suck, ref, you suck, or you hear some other things, right? But when you do it on the road, then all of a sudden it just ignites the home crowd to a point where it gives the home team more energy. And I just felt like they just lost their composure, and that just wasn't the great time to do it. It wasn't. It just wasn't at all. So that's where it is. And again, I get it. Like, I don't know if the guy made wrong calls or what have you. I mean, of course, the 76ers are going to say that, but the Pelicans are going to be like, nah, that was the right call, right? But I just feel like when you got the veteran team, in which the 76ers are, in that instance, the veteran team, you can't have technical fouls in those instances, especially not that close together.
Well, I know that they made one, missed one. Devontae Graham missed one of the two technical fouls. And the Pelicans paraded to the free throw line. Keith, we're accustomed to seeing the Sixers do that. 18 for 22, the Sixers were 8 for 10 for Embiid, 6 for 6 for James Harden. The rest of the team, no one got to the free throw line to attempt more than 2 free throws on the evening. Zion Williamson was 10 of 16 from the foul line tonight, Keith, 26 for 36, a +8 in makes for the Pelicans on Friday night in their win over the Sixers. Sixers now take on the Oklahoma City Thunder, Keith, on Saturday. That's a 8 o'clock start time here on the East Coast. And the Pelicans, of course, at the top of the West. The Thunder are one of the teams at the bottom of the West. They're not a good team. They're 15-20 right now, and they're 10-8 at home. So they have been idle. They have an all-star level player in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Josh Giddey, Lou Dort, 2 other talented players on their squad. They have some young guys while they're still rebuilding. They've put together some pretty good collection of talent that they have. Their number 2 overall pick from this past draft, Chet Holmgren, out for the year because of the foot injury. We think it's the year, out for the foot injury. So right now, they do have their all-star in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They're waiting for the Sixers. And Keith, every time the Sixers come to town, teams are going to get up for them because they do feature 2 all-stars in Joel Embiid and James Harden. So they're going to have to lace them up Saturday night against this Thunder team.
Yeah, not only that, they got a guy on that team, Isaiah Joe, who's been like lighting it up, making raining threes on people and looking at the 76ers like, oh, so y'all said I wasn't good enough. So typically, you got to go through that motivation. Like young guys, especially, and I should say veterans too, people tend to get up against, against the team that got rid of them. Also, the one thing you said, like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I mean, like, they just gave up 42 points against CJ McCollum. This other guy is one of the top scorers in the league. So, it's one of those things where I'm like looking at it like, I'm not saying the Sixers are going to lose the game, but if I'm the Sixers, you got to be a little careful because, Shai Gilgeous is going to Gilgeous-Alexander is going to light y'all up, or at least he's going to try to. So, I'm looking at it like, this game is just got more important. Not only that, the 76ers have lost 5 of their last 6 road games.
Mm-hmm.
5 of their last 6.
The last win was against the Knicks on Christmas Day.
Yeah, the last win was against the Knicks on Christmas Day. So, and then before that one, the last time they won on the road was when they beat the 2 games that they beat. Who was it? When they beat Orlando on Thanksgiving, like around Thanksgiving holiday. So, so you're looking at it and you're saying to yourself, like, man, like, this road game just got a whole lot more important than what you thought it was going to be. So, we'll see, man, because, they got young guards who like to get out there. They're real athletic. They're probably going to want to run with them. You know, the Sixers, like you said, are coming off of a back-to-back. And this is a nice, young, exciting team. So it's going to be a must-watch TV.
Yes, it will be, as you get ready for the ball to drop on the 2022 season and bring in the 2023 calendar year for the Sixers. They're going to try to start things off in the year correctly with a win and jump into the new year on some positive vibes, because guess what? They got the Pelicans on Monday back here in Philadelphia. So that should be something as these two teams match up on Monday back here in town. All right, we got to thank everybody for making Locked On 76ers your first listen today. Now make Locked On Sports Today your second. Peter Bukowski brings you the biggest stories from around the sports world in 20 minutes. Get the analysis and opinions before anyone else with our local and national experts and insiders. Locked On Sports Today podcast, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Keith, do you mind letting the good folks know where they can find us?
Yeah, they can find us on the same place where you get this other podcast. But when you do is when you click onto our YouTube channel, make sure you click on the Liberty Bell, and that way you become a new subscriber. You can follow my man D at Divine G975 on Twitter, and you can find him on 97.5 FM radio in Philadelphia typically from 6 to 10 p.m. Monday through Fridays on the Divine Giving Show. So you can find him there. You can find me at Pompey on Sixers, and you can read my stuff in the Philadelphia Inquirer and Inquirer.com.
All right. Well, listen, man, Keith, despite all of that, Happy New Year, man.
Happy New Year to you too, bro.
Yeah, I'll see you in the new year. And by the time we get back and get ready for the new year, the Sixers will be hosting the Pelicans all over again. And maybe they'll pick up a W, evening up this 4-game trip at 2-2. Thanks so much, everybody. Happy New Year to you all. Be safe. Remember, stay safe. Don't drive drunk. You know, all that stuff. All right, Keith, talk to you later, man.
Peace.
All right.